What's up guys, Jay's 2 cents here in case you forgot who I am. So if you saw in our last video, we did a stupid experiment again with an air conditioner, and I promised you guys we had something even stupider in store, and we're gonna do that today using, oh, I don't know, $5,000 worth of motherboard and CPU alone. If this all goes horribly wrong.
What?
Use your imagination. EVGA is proud to announce our latest Z490 for the Win motherboard for the latest Intel 10th Gen Core processors. All new features including a 14-phase digital VRM power design, Wi-Fi 6, 4K HDMI port for onboard graphics, and dual switchable BIOS make the Z490 for the Win a full-featured motherboard for your next build. To see the full list of specs, follow the link in the description below. Before we can get into the experimental part of this, I have to build it, obviously. And I chose this because, I don't know, I want to see how much better I can get from our previous score where we did ice water on this. So you can see I've still got it somewhat insulated and blue paper towels around here. The water block's already installed, which is nice because the block is what holds down the CPU. There's no socket retention for the 3175X. Takes a lot of power on this motherboard, as you can see. So we have two 1600 watt power supplies we're gonna need for this. I want to say, I think 5.0, maybe 5.1 is how far we got it. We rewatched my video, and I don't think I actually said in that video how fast we got it.
It was because you're so excited
I was so basking in the glory of punching Steve in his hair that we beat his scores. But anyway, yeah, so we're gonna be using the 3175X, which is like a $3,000 CPU, and then we're using the Dominus board, which is like a $2,000 motherboard. It's 28 core CPU. Jay, why don't you use AMD for any of this stuff? Well, I'm gonna be honest with you here. I wanna see if I can beat my 3D Mark CPU score. And we know that 3D Mark is definitely very Intel biased in a sense that having more cores is not better when it comes to 3D Mark. Having Intel and then pushing that as fast as it can go gets you the best scores. If we were just doing Cinebench, which I'm gonna try and do on here too, because you can pass 3D Mark easily versus Cinebench, which crashes way early and is a much more difficult instruction set for the CPU to run. Then I would be using like an AMD rig. But sadly, all of our high core count Threadripper stuff is being used. Phil's system actually gets put to work every single day with his, 32 core CPU, 64 threads. And then I have a 24 core Threadripper, which we know would not do as good as the 28 core Intel that's gonna be over 5 gigahertz. But I said we did ice water in the last one. Today, I am going to try and build a closed loop dry ice system. And I think it's going to fail miserably. So we're gonna kind of do a test run right now, but we're gonna get it all set up. This is probably gonna take a couple of days for us to do. We have to build a reservoir. I need to test whatever we build with water, because if it holds water, it'll hold glycol. So the reason why we're using glycol is it has a much better freezing point. -50 Fahrenheit, which is this many in Celsius. All right, so I got my temperature probe here. Woo, I'm just kidding. No, you take a temperature in someone's butt. Why the butt? Isn't the armpit preferred before the butt? All right, so before I hook up any of the power cables and stuff, I need to get my proof of concept to work on the loop. This CPU is held down by whatever your cooling solution is. So as soon as I loosen these up, I've got to redo the thermal paste anyway. But we're gonna be switching to a thermal paste right now that we know works really well on Subzero. Thermal Grizzly probably would have been fine too. I don't know where it's at. I was actually looking for it. But we're gonna be using Kingpin's concoction. It's just so weird to see something I'm working on says Intel Xeon, because I never do Xeon stuff. I'm not Linus, he's like a Xeon fanboy. It's what lost him Scrapyard Wars the season I was fighting against him. Ew.
Why did you use the razor blade to scoop?
I don't know. When I'm not sure what to do, I just stick my finger in. And like Phil was saying, off camera, XOC or extreme overclocking just looks so janky. That's why Kingpin does it with style. He's like, I'm bored now, let's make a closed loop LN2 system. So it's funny because the only 6 DIMMs that we have that match, because this is a 6-channel, is the Trinity Royal stuff. So we'll be doing this in style. And if I really wanted to flex, I would have 12. So we needed an equally ridiculous graphics card for this equally ridiculous setup. So of course I went with the EVGA 1650 Super. It's just it's just extreme in the other direction. All right, so I'm not gonna bother powering any of this up yet. We need to build a reservoir. Now this is where Phil and I have been really going back and forth trying to figure out how we're gonna do this. We were looking up the, what's it called?
Brittle-ductile transition.
Brittle-ductile transition temperature. That'll tell you at what point this will turn brittle and break. And you know, believe it or not, that information's hard to find. There's plenty of info telling you how hot it can go, where it will melt and all that sort of stuff, but very little information finding how cold it will go. So we're really torn. Do I just use the metal tubing that I know will hold up? Or do we just take a chance with this stuff? In terms of the fluid, I put it in a distilled water bottle, J-juice. This is just straight up RV and marine antifreeze. It's glycol-based coolant, and it's safe for the components of our loop. We just don't know yet how cold the pump will run, and we don't know like if the pipe will hold up to it, or if any of the other plastics, because this is a plastic block. So we're gonna use this top though in a dual pump. Oh, hit me in the neck. Get to the pump, get to the gym. Okay, we proved our point, it's heavy. So why am I using two pumps? Because I only have this one pump top that's not like an all-in-one acrylic reservoir deal like this. And that's why we were looking up the temperatures for acrylic, because I was like, well, if I make this too cold, this will shatter. The best information we can find is about -10 C is all that we can really reliably go down to. And 0 C is freezing. That's 32 Fahrenheit. That's not much colder than we've already gotten this. We want to go much colder. Well, I was telling Phil how I don't have like enough of the same brand plug. Oh yeah, I do, they're all right here, whatever. So I've got Bits Power, Alpha Cool, Primo Chill, no, Fantex, and Singularity. Here's the dealio. When you put dry ice into a liquid, it doesn't matter what liquid it is, the liquid is so hot compared to the natural state of dry ice that it immediately starts to do what looks like boiling. And what it is, it's the dry ice immediately turning back into a gas. Actually, dry ice, when it's, I think, in its natural state, is actually just a gas. When you put it in coolant, it's, or even just water, just like how efficient water is at transferring heat, it's also that efficient at like reducing or increasing whatever the relative temperature is of the object it's touching is more efficient and faster. So when you put dry ice into a liquid, it immediately starts what looks like is boiling, and that's the bubbles of the dry ice turning back into a gas and rising and then going into the atmosphere. What I don't want to happen is to just be like, okay, here's a reservoir, here's the water. We're not using a radiator, we're gonna be pumping the actual fluid, the glycol mix, through the loop, putting a bunch of dry ice in there and having it bubble and percolate or whatever it's physically doing, and then have those air bubbles picked up into the pump and circulated and have a bunch of aerated loop. So I kind of came up with this, our chamber of dry ice secrets. That was a Harry Potter reference. I want to take it apart so people can see what it is. Oh, it just came right out. Okay, so this is just a drain vent grill, right? Vent. Like you see, this is the bottom of a shower or something. It's just a really cheap plastic one. And then this is just a coupler for what, 3-inch to 4-inch PVC pipe. So what we were able to come up with, so what this has allowed me to create is a doohickey that allows me to get the dry ice up off the surface of the floor of whatever the reservoir is. And we're gonna probably turn this into just a reservoir for that reason. And then we can put the dry ice on that and it won't go all the way down, but we can drill a hole in here and attach one of my fittings so that we're picking up the cold fluid from underneath it, but then when we return and we have the, it goes back to the reservoir, it's gonna come in the top. So we're forcing that water to flow and mix. We are not sealing this up, obviously, because it would then pressurize, and we don't want that. The same reason why you guys were all freaking out when you thought I was putting my lid back on my thermos when I had LN2 in it, going, hey Jay, you're making an LN2 explosive device. I wasn't doing that. I was just resting it on there. I really got this stuck.
That's speed.
Yeah. All right.
That is the straightest line.
I can fix it with scissors, but does it matter? Now, For those people that are probably yelling about condensation, you probably never saw this in the back of the room because you weren't looking that far behind us. We got these. Oh, that's gonna be a problem. Stupid fitting. Let me clean up this table and then we'll turn on the pump and we'll see how this goes. All right, so as you can see, we've got it now flowing. I'm probably gonna have to increase the level, obviously, but you can see, actually, this might be fine on its slowest speed. If you guys have ever wondered how to get these little micro bubbles out of your system, one, you have to let it run for a while, but two, if you put the pump to its slowest speed, it'll get rid of the micro bubbles. But first, you should run high speed to move the big bubbles, and then once you're sure you have no more sloshing in your radiator and stuff, and then you have it, the big bubbles out, but you have those micro bubbles, if you slow the pumps down, look how fast it's doing it now. So what we'll be doing is we'll be putting the dry ice in there. But then we're picking it up right here. You can even see it through the plastic. We're picking up right there under the dry ice, underneath the grate. So we're not picking up the sublimation. All right, well, it's together. It's not leaking. Didn't think it would, but we can now get some dry ice in the morning and see if my theory even works. We know that 60 degrees Celsius on liquid temperature is too hot, but they don't mention anything about too cold. So we have no idea if the pumps will even go. Like the electronics, if they start, if condensation starts building up on the pump side, there's electronics in here. So our pump could die. Some stuff we think we thought some things through, but I have a bad feeling about this one, I really do. So I guess we just have to find out how it works starting now. I woke up this morning and I went, you know, this might be the day I unnecessarily ruin very expensive hardware. But we do it for your entertainment. So do me a favor, if you find this entertaining in any way whatsoever, just hit like. It doesn't hurt you any. Maybe it does, I don't know. What I'm gonna do first is I'm going to fire up the system. I'm gonna see what it boots at. I think last time we were done with the ice water and stuff, I just turned it off. So I think all those BIOS settings should still be in there. That'll at least tell me where we were. So I've also got our thermometer out here. That way I know what the actual temperature of the water is that it's getting feed from, if that makes sense. Oh, that's Fahrenheit. I was like, that's not right. It's XMP 00, 50. So that's where we left off, was 50. Dude, the CPU is currently at 50 or 43C sitting here in the BIOS. So what I need to do right now is I have to start controlling this temperature slightly. Okay, let's see if that'll boot. I'm just gonna put a tiny little piece in there. It's like a science experiment. NVRAM. Don't do this to me, come on. I didn't do anything except slow it down. CPU code E. Fine, we're gonna clear CMOS. It's like a witch's brew. Is it witch's brew? Achoo! Let's just see if we can get into the OS. Oh, see, it's getting some bubbles now.
Oh, wow.
This might fail miserably.
Oh, are you not getting flow? It's backwards.
Oh, it's picking up. Well, no, there's just so much air in there right now, it's not moving anything. That's what I was most worried about. That's what we were trying to stop from happening. Oh, I know what's happening. Shoot. Major flaw in our design. Eventually, they get small enough till they fall through the grate. So our idea of elevating it worked. So I almost feel like what we need now is we need a baffle. That's actually pretty awesome. It proves that our idea was necessary to begin with. The holes on that are just too big, as you can see. Here's a small part right there. So what happens is they eventually get small enough to where they fall through the grate, and even the small bits are turning into gas. And so what's happening is the pump just eventually picks up all that. It got vapor locked to where air made it to the pump. Once a water pump sees air, it stops moving anything. Because a water pump can't move air. All right, so here's what I came up with. It's just a fan filter, or a case filter actually for a fan that I just cut, left its plastic frame on. Pressure fit it in there. And we'll put this one above it. So we're starting to get a little bit of like real light condensation on here. I'm so worried about how wet that block is gonna get. So one of the things we're dealing with is, as it gets colder, the pumps don't wanna move the fluid anymore. And we know that the glycol gets thicker as it gets colder. Look at that. They're at 100%.
Not even that thick, though.
There's 2 pumps at 100% right now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, what is causing our flow reduction here? So we might be completely done already without ever even getting to do anything, because what I'm showing you right here is I'm putting this dry ice, and I'm sure plenty of you chemists out there have already, like from the moment we said what we were gonna do, you're like, that's not gonna work. And you're right, because what's happening here,
Oh yeah, it's freezing. Or it's at least
what's coagulating, yeah. The irony that it's doing it at a warmer temperature than the water.
it's like screaming.
Look, you can see it. The glycol definitely froze. So we chose the glycol we got because it said -50, but now we're thinking -50 Fahrenheit would be the ambient temperature they're assuming it could work in. How about we try it this time with one that's not mostly water? We fell for the marketing trick. One, we didn't read that it says burst proof to -50 C. Then we found out that this is actually not even designed to be run in an engine because it's mostly water. This one, at a 70-30 antifreeze to water mix, is good to -64 C. So now, in all seriousness, if anyone was gonna do a loop that they want orange coolant in, just go get something like this and then pre-mix it with water to dilute it a little bit.
Because that already has growth inhibitors too.
Yeah, because it's made for an engine with all sorts of different metals. So the other problem right now is the thickness of this glycol mix. I think it's too thick for these pumps. This is turning into such a ridiculously unnecessary amount of work. 2 D5 pumps can't move this glycol. I mean, I already blew out the blockage, right? Oh. Ah, that's wet with it too. It tastes so bad. Oh, so do the shop towels. Is there like a chemical on the shop towels? All right, so we went ahead and just added a little bit of water to it. Since we know that it said on the back, the 3070 mix is -64 C freeze protection. So that really just shows you how much resistance just the thickness of a coolant can be. So that's why you should never run out and run straight antifreeze like I've seen some people suggest, and we talked about it in the past, and I just thought 2 pumps would be enough to overcome that thickness of it. Maybe we can get something happening now. We still haven't got through the Windows updates.
I know.
So once again, the second we hooked up the block, we got a blockage. I can blow through it, but it takes a lot of energy. So we want to open up the block now and see what's going on inside. So this is what I suspect is causing me a problem here. The fins go this way, so left and right. This goes across it like that. So the water is being forced down through it, and then it's being forced to come back through it and out. And if you look at this, that is really thin and not that clean right now either, because probably of all the coagulated junk. I'm gonna take this out, because now we'll just have a nice big open area for it to flow through. All right, so with that jet plate gone, it's actually flowing pretty nicely. What's the temp at right now? 0. Okay, well, all right, we've now gone sub-zero. Oh, look, the block is starting to frost up. Okay, the loop is definitely getting cold. Dude, it went 97 and then it stopped. It locked up. I wanted this to work so badly. I mean, look at the blocks. It's doing something, or the pumps. The bottom of the LN2 pots and stuff are like that thick. You get that metal then that cold, it's that good at holding on to that temperature when heat's applied to it. We now have a piece of metal that thin, trying to do the same thing. So I think we have extreme cold on one side of it, and extreme heat on the other side of it. And then what we're seeing is kind of the equilibrium of that.
Instead of the cold winning, which is what
Instead of the cold winning. This channel has been full of a lot of, wow, that was surprising, that actually worked.
This is actually kind of the first time where
This is the first time we have just had a straight up hardcore failure. Let's go ahead, take it apart. Let's take a look at the block and see if the block even got that cold. Like I said, look at the temperature that we have the coolant at. Now, what happens if I make it start flowing suddenly? Let's see. Look, I've created a sub-zero flowing loop. So I'm happy about that. This is exactly what the LN2 pots and stuff do. So what we think we might do for a second attempt at this next time is take off the base plate on here and use it as a template and go to a machine shop or something like that, and then get them to make us this plate, probably without the cooling fins or anything in it, but really thick. That way what we can do is we can create a larger mass of metal to have a higher energy that it can hang on to in terms of negative temperatures. Just like this. This pump has not been running in a while, but it's still all frozen cold. So like we were saying, we think what's happening is the base of this is just too thin and it's losing the fight between the hot and cold, and it needs more energy stored, which means thicker metal. But if you guys have any suggestions or anything maybe that's super obvious that we're just missing, then do me a favor, comment down below how you think, and only real scientists with like a science license should comment what you think we could do to make this successful. Or do you think, quite honestly, compared to direct contact LN2 pot, we are just wasting our time, which is also quite possible. But that's where we're gonna stop for today. We got some very valuable lessons or education from some failures today. And like I said, we got all this dry ice left. I'll figure out something to do with it. All right guys, thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next failure.